I'm Diksha. I've been working at Google for around 2.5 years, and I work in an organization called NBU, Next Billion Users. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about Android in emerging markets. So yeah, that's basically the team I'm working on. Like NBU is Next Billion Users, and I work on NBU and on an Android product itself. Um, before starting the talk itself, just feel free to interrupt me at any time, and we can try making this session a little more interactive. So in case you guys have any questions, just stop me at any time and you can ask me a question. Does that sound fine? This is called the golden circle, and most of the companies they try to go outwards to inwards. Like they first define what their product is, then they define how they're going to build the product, and third, they define why they're building the product. But it's been there's been a research on like successful companies, and they figured out that basically going inwards to outwards makes more sense because people don't buy what you're building, but they buy why you're building it. Like vision for any company is important. So let's see what the why, how, and what is. So why is basically the purpose, how is the process, and what is the result, right? So let's start with why do we build for emerging markets? Like what is the purpose of building for emerging markets? Before that, let me show you guys some statistics. So this is basically global statistics on app downloads and uses. So global app downloads across iOS App Store, Google Play, and third-party Android stores surpassed 175 billion downloads in 2017. Time spent in app per day grew 30% from 2015 to reach 3 hours on average. So right now, in 2018, it's actually third space in India. India already in Brazil, also we are rapidly growing. Second thing is Facebook. Facebook is a team called Special Countries India that's particularly focused on the needs of people in Indian markets. I also know that Microsoft has a research lab exclusively researching on technology for these markets. So yeah. Now let me tell you guys a success story. So I work on an app called Files by Google. This is not a publicity stunt by me. I'm not trying to get more downloads on Files by Google. I'm just trying to show show what the market for emerging what opportunities are provided in emerging markets itself. So as you can see the graph on the right, if you look at weekly active users, the number of users has actually exponentially increased. So we started in January of this year, and we started in January of last year, and today we have around 51 million weekly active users. We actually have 85 million 28-day active users, and within a couple of weeks we are targeting 100 million active users. From the graph below, you can see that 21 million of our users come from India, 7 million come from Brazil, and around 145,000 users come from Nepal. So you can see that there is a huge market for there's a huge market for Android applications in these countries. So yeah, but let me also tell you another statement. If you actually look over the internet, Morgan Stanley's Capital International Emerging Market Index does not classify Nepal as an emerging country. Then why are we even talking about it, right? Like why we wasting usability is connectivity. As you can see on the image on the right, we have a buffering symbol that goes on going on forever. That's basically because you don't have enough data, or you don't have you're performing in slow 2G speeds. So does your product actually perform well in slow 2G speeds? Does it perform well where 2G switches to 3G and there's a lot of switch between 2G and 3G networks? Does it perform well in intermittent connections? What about offline? A lot of users in these markets, either they do not have connectivity for most part of the day, or sometimes the users opt out of being online because of high data charges. So when you're building a product for emerging markets, you need to see whether whether your product is usable by these users where connectivity is too low. Second thing is compatibility. Now, as you know, Android market is full of devices ranging from low end to high end with, for example, these specifications, right? Like RAM can vary from 32 MB to like 12 GB. The display can be from 2.4 inches to 6.75 inches. They're touchscreen versus feature phones. So as you can see on the image on the right, touchscreen is a phone where touch works, but feature phone you have to basically use keypad to go around different functions of the application itself. So there's no touch availability to it. Now, apart from these things, there are also limited battery life, different operating system built on the top of Android. So, can you make sure that your product is actually compatible with the hardware and software on low-end devices as well? The third thing that comes in usability is cost. Now, we know that data cost is really high in Nepal, and we would like users to be able to install our product with least cost possible, like installation, even updates. Updates should not take a lot of users' data. Third is usage as well. Also, I know of examples where products have tried to provide users the capability of executing like heavy data heavy operations on Wi-Fi or mobile data. For example, photos. You can choose an option of backing up on Wi-Fi only. So yeah. Now let me give you an example. So I told you I'm working on an app called Files by Google. So so looking at these three things, connectivity, compatibility, and cost. Here are the three examples. So first thing is connectivity, right? So we have a sharing feature. We are actually using the offline where users keep users being offline as an opportunity. We let users share offline content because there is a need for there is a lot of offline content in emerging markets, right? Even in Nepal, we use a lot of like offline music, offline videos, offline images. So we saw that as an opportunity to share files across to people. Second image that you see is basically of our app that is used in feature phones. The feature phones over here, which basically make use of keypad. So this second picture is basically an example of that. Like users can actually use keypad to make use of our app. And third thing is also cost, right? So our app basically works extremely well offline. It can perform extremely well, like it can do data heavy operations, even low 2G connections. So a lot of our backend jobs are actually done in background. Like our UI would never stall, like it would always try to show some kind of information to the user. So yeah, so I think Files app is a good example for how you can incorporate usability in your product itself. Now let's talk about usefulness. So there are three things to this as well. So first thing is commerce. So does your product generate monetary value? Does your product support local payments? Like does it support local businesses? Now, are you aware of local holidays and festivals? Example, Holi, Diwali, take advantage of that. So what this basically means is recently, let me give you an example. So recently, during Chinese New Year, WeChat launched a new feature where users could send one another gift cards, but in a very traditional Chinese way. So they made use of that. They took advantage of Chinese New Year to actually make their product viral and uh, just just support local payments and support local holidays itself. Amazon has its Amazon Prime Day on Diwali and Holi. They actually um, have sale that people can make use of. In the US, people there's like Black Friday sale. So all of these you need to put into account all of these when you're building a product. Second is culture. Does your product actually run user studies? Does your product remove offensive content because you can get censored by the censor team? Then, does your product include demographics, including gender, age, caste, and religion? Also, one of the things that we have noticed in NBU is a lot of times, a lot of products should be human, like they should incorporate human powered system versus automated systems altogether. Like they really like a human touch to the product itself. The third thing is content. Does your product have localization? So localization basically means like if you are providing your app in English, can you provide the same app in different languages or not? Internationalization. Internationalization basically means that if is your app compatible, can it be used by users in different countries with different languages itself? Third thing is low literacy users. Now, sometimes you don't want your app to have a lot of text input, right? Because low literacy users would like to minimize text input. They would want to avoid scrolling. They would probably like to tap versus type. So, are you including all of these? Like, are you keeping in mind content when you're building your product? Now, coming back to an example of our files by Google. So, as you can see on the first screen, we are providing users a reward system, but we are also making use of Google Pay that is heavily used in India. So we are trying to use local modes of payment. Also, this reward system actually gets used a lot. Like we try to promote it a lot during Diwali and Holi. The second image, as you can see, is of our research trip. So we actually have research trips in different parts of the world. We've had two in China, one in Brazil, two in India, and recently we also went to Indonesia. And as you can see from the image, we actually go to people's houses just to understand the culture a little bit more. So user studies should be a big part of your product itself. The third screenshot is basically from our app where you can actually choose what language your app should view content in. So whatever language you choose, all of the strings, everything that is shown will be translated to another language. And at Google, we have a team of linguists who make that translation. Like we don't actually make use of just Google Translate to translate these strings. These linguists actually try to understand the meaning of different words and then they try to convert it in like 20 different languages so that's more relevant to the users. Now, the third thing is fun. Now, I personally think adding a fun element is the most difficult part of a project. Like, there's not a straight right way to do it. Now, let's look at what this framework uh, comprises of social. So NBU users spend majority of the day in company of others. Like, yeah, that's so true, right? Like we actually like sitting together with a bunch of people, 10 people around, 5 people around, 2 people around, and just talking about the day. We should enable our product should enable users to include your product in the social interaction. So is your product being used in social interactions or not? For example, uh, like any of the social media apps, right? They make why are they extremely successful in emerging markets? Because we like in NBU users, since we spend a lot of time in company of others, we try to use those social products even more. So does your product create valuable social currency that makes users look good in their community? Now, so this is a very like I personally think that this might not be extremely important, but I also think that basically makes your product viral as well, right? Like if your app makes the users look good in a community, then it's very likely for the product to get viral altogether. Now, sensorial. So, NBU countries are vibrant, loud, and densely populated. So, a perfect example of this is we recently had a research trip in China, and our app basically has a lot of white spaces. So, an example of that is if you look over here on the third screenshot. So, there's a lot of white spaces, and we took this to China, and then we realized that in China, basically um, the apps, most of the apps, they're very densely populated. So if the users see a lot of white spaces, they basically thought that our app is incomplete. So they're like, okay, go complete your app and then come back. Like, why are you showing us an incomplete app? but it's just the way we try to show it in the US market versus in different markets, even across NBU, it's going to be different. So NBU countries are vibrant, loud, and densely populated. Modern Western aesthetics fail and wash out in these environments. So, like I told you, right, in China, the white spaces did not work out really well. Third is it possible to create healthy clutter to balance clear, actionable UI and local need for visual density? Now, if you look at if something is like vibrant, loud, and densely populated, it might be possible that you might be missing out on providing users with actionable UI. After all, you want to make your app usable by the users as well, right? So, how do you put all of this together and try to build your product? Now, third thing is surprise. Uh, I, I, I totally agree to this that NBU struggles are hard and are hard spanning needs like hunger, literacy, and better infrastructure. So users generally seek escape from these harsh realities, and they deeply appreciate small attempts to delight and surprise users. So they deeply appreciate small attempts to delight and surprise users. Yeah. So instead of just solving a problem for a user, if your app or your product can provide a little extra of something that allows users to celebrate the relief, I think that just adds on to your product being viral. So an example of this, like uh, the Files app that I've been talking about, right? We have a mascot called Tidy. As you can see in these images, there's a Tidy, and we provide these small animations at different parts of it. For example, if user has deleted 5 files, then we show them a, an animation of Tidy popping out and trying to say that, okay, now you can enjoy the extra space. So all of these like fun elements are very important to delight your users and make your app a little more fun to use. So yeah, so I would again, so this is basically what I wanted to talk about. I would like to end the presentation again with a slide because I really personally think that if your product is built around this framework, like basically this at least at NBU at Google, we try to use this framework to build successful products. So like Files app itself is built around these principles, and uh, as I've shown the graph, it's a good example of how it has been successful. So yeah, usable, useful, and fun. So yeah, this is about my presentation. In case you guys have any questions, um, feel free to ask me any questions.